Over the past few weeks, E&P has unexpectedly found itself at the center of two spirited debates about the future of journalism. The first was my interview with Steven Waldman, founder of Report for America and now Rebuild Local News, who argued that public policy is becoming a fourth leg supporting local journalism alongside advertising, subscriptions, and philanthropy. That conversation caught the attention of the Wall Street Journal, which responded with an opinion piece questioning whether taxpayer support can coexist with true editorial independence, and arguing that journalism ultimately must remain accountable to consumer demand. In other words, if it can't support itself like a business, then go out of business. At nearly the same time, a panel I moderated at the New York Press Association's annual conference sparked another debate. That discussion focused on newsroom cadence, audience expectations, and AI. It later prompted lots of social chatter, as well as a thoughtful response from LMC president and local news publisher Christian Hendricks, who argued in a piece that we did publish that local news organizations can no longer successfully pursue both maximum reach and maximum relevance. At some point, he suggested newsrooms must choose. On the surface, these seem like two separate conversations. One asked, who should pay for journalism? The other, what kind of journalism should we be producing? But I would argue that we're really asking the same question. What is journalism's purpose in 2026? Because I couldn't think of anyone better suited to wrestle with these questions. I've invited one of the news industry's most provocative thinkers, debaters, and digital pioneers. Hi, I'm Mike Blinder, publisher of E&P Magazine. This is E&P Reports, our weekly podcast series that explores the people, ideas, and issues shaping the future of local news publishing. That provocative thinker joining me today is Jeff Jarvis. Welcome back, Jeff, to E&P Reports. Believe it or not, this is your fifth time on. You've joined the likes of Gordon Burrell, Ken Doctor, even Steven Waldman, Tim Franklin. I know on Saturday Night Live, they've got jackets for Five Timers Clubs. We made one through AI because we can't afford to do a real one. Here's what you look like in the jacket, Jeff.
Extra large, please.
You got it. Jeff, we've got you down as an American journalist, professor, author. How many books right now? I mean, you got...
Heading to 7. I got the new book called Hot Type, which I hope your newspaper folks will like. It's a history of the linotype and its role in mass media. Tons of amazing stories I came across. I just love the machine. I'm old enough to have seen it operate, and I have lines of type here. My favorite part of the book, I'm sorry for the plug, but I'm going to get this in.
Go ahead.
Is at the end of the book, I put in a colophon, which for those who aren't in book publishing know is put in there to say how the book was produced. At the Museum of Printing in Haverhill, Mass., I produced this on a linotype. So there's linotype text in the book, which was a whole bunch of fun.
You're currently Professor Emeritus, serving as the Leonard Tao Professor of Journalism Innovation at the City University of New York's Craig Newmark Graduate School of Journalism. Are you still a professor at
I'm working with, I'm a visiting professor at Stony Brook, and I'm working relevant to this conversation as a fellow at the Center for Cooperative Media at Montclair State, where much is happening. And I just joined the board of the not-for-profit that has bought New Jersey Hills Media. So I'm in the newspaper business, Mike.
There you go. Well, then no one better than you, I think, based on all these credentials, are here to talk about who should pay for journalism, what kind of journalism should we be producing, and more importantly, what is journalism's purpose in 2026? And anything else we decide to bring up during the conversation. Stick around, we'll be right back.
Hello, my name is Walter Hussman. Our family has been in the news business for over 100 years. Journalism includes two parts, reporting the news and providing opinions. But in recent years, there's been too much opinion appearing in news reporting. This has eroded public trust in news reporting to the lowest level of any U.S. institution. To address this, we started a nonprofit, the Center for Integrity in News Reporting.
The Center for Integrity in News Reporting, CFINR, is on a mission to rebuild public trust in journalism, one newsroom and one classroom at a time. we champion the effort to have news organizations and journalism schools create and prominently display their own clear, concise statements of core journalistic values. Learn more by visiting the Center for Integrity and News Reporting site at cfinr.org.
All right, Jeff, let's start with the Waldman interview. Steven Waldman argues that public policy is becoming journalism's fourth leg of support alongside advertising, subscriptions, and philanthropy. Is that a necessary evolution or a dangerous one, in your opinion?
So you've had Steve and me debating on this air quote of your podcast. I'm glad for that. Steve is a smart guy who loves the business and cares about it, but he and I do disagree about this. I think there's danger in expecting tax support from journalism. Now, it does happen in some ways, and I know it's going to happen, and so I'll talk about how I think it should happen when it does. But let's deal with the dangers first. Obviously, first, government can give and government can take away, and that's an issue. And we see that with public broadcasting at the federal level now. We've seen that across all kinds of states. We also see the advent in the United States, believe it or not, of state media. We have state or urbanized state media here in the form of CBS. Look at what's just happening right now with CBS being taken over by the Ellisons, CNN likely soon to be taken over. Sinclair and other outlets are doing the bidding of the current administration. So when you have state media already, and then you try to act upon trying to get state funds, surely you can see the danger that is right there and apparent. I've also seen that in some cases, this effort isn't about using tax money, but it's about extorting certain companies. We saw this in California. We've seen this in Australia. Well, you digital guys took our revenue as if God gave newspaper publishers and hedge funds the revenue that they had and lost. And so you see that kind of extortion happening. I don't think that's healthy. If a state says this matters to us and we're going to devote support to it, then devote tax dollars to it. Let everybody support it. But the idea that one company or two companies should do that. In California, I was involved. I testified there against the legislation. I was talking to the state librarian who was going to head the fund there. And unfortunately, that got all bollocked up in the end. Now it's another entity doing the funding. I don't know exactly where it's going to go, but my fear is that too much of the money will go to the hedge funds. A lot of this effort comes from the lobbying of for the old media industry at the expense of the new media industry. We saw that in New York, where not-for-profit media is left out of this. Now, having said all of that, sorry for my soliloquy here, but it is Saturday Night Live, and I get to do a monologue to start with the show. I have been a proponent of what we call the New Jersey model. In New Jersey, we have the New Jersey Civic Info Consortium. We also have the Center for Cooperative Media at Montclair State. They work hand in hand. There is state money, and the origins of that philosophically come when Governor Christie sold our public broadcasting licenses into Philadelphia and New York, and as a way to get an advantage from an FCC spectrum licensing. But we lost our public broadcasting in the state. And so kind of out of guilt, the legislature established the consortium. And the good thing about the New Jersey model is that it's a tax across the state or other income as well. They use tower licensing for public broadcasting, but it's revenue to the state. Second is that it's administered by an independent board made up in great measure by representatives from state universities. Third is that it has a mission. It doesn't just say, okay, hedge funds, here's money to you because you think that you got God's gift to humanity in New Jersey. Instead, you have to apply for the money. You have to have a reason to do it. It has to fit the mission of the consortium. And there's accountability. So put all that together. And if we're going to do public funding, then I would argue it needs to be something like that. And so I've talked about that in California. I've talked about that in Oregon, where I did go to testify against what I thought was terrible legislation. Mm-hmm. I've talked about that in Illinois. I'm not in favor of government funding, but if you're going to do it right. Finally, if you're going to do it, you also better be aware that it might work wonderfully in New Jersey or Oregon or California, but you better have a formula to protect against becoming state media in Texas or Arkansas or Florida.
But let's go back up to 40,000 feet. Woven into that Wall Street Journal piece was pretty much saying, well, the Bezos argument. If you can't support yourself, you're irrelevant. Do you believe that since local news or the press, however you want to define it, has been defined in the Constitution, that we're not just a regular business like a car wash or a real estate agency, we are something that must survive and must have some government support, or should we just, if you can't pay the bills, just go out of business?
I think one way or the other, we have to be sustainable. And if we become dependent on anybody, when I started and ran a center for entrepreneurial journalism when I was at CUNY. It's no longer there. They've changed it. But I was about teaching students the business of journalism. And I taught them every single source of revenue has conflict involved, right? Reader revenue has conflict involved because you're going to suck up to your readers. Advertising has conflict involved. Government money has conflict involved. Everything has conflict. And that's what we have to do as journalists, is to have our own mission and ethics to deal with that. So I'm not trying to say that being profitable is pure or purer, but it is more independent. We remember that newspapers in the United States were run and owned by political parties until advertising freed it from that dependence.
But you mentioned, and I agree with you 1,000%, all forms of funding have strings attached. Mm-hmm. You didn't say philanthropy. You said
strings there too. Oh, are there strings there too?
But there are so many that don't believe there are strings there. But I agree, there are strings when you take philanthropic dollars, correct?
Yeah, when I taught students and they'd come into the class in the first week, they said, well, I'm not going to worry about all this business stuff because I'm not for profit. Well, of course, you have to worry about the business. It's still a business, basically. But you end up having to go to philanthropy, and it's hard to get to them. They have ADD. They like you today. They don't like you tomorrow. You've got to do all kinds of reports. They do try oftentimes to influence your coverage. There is no panacea. There is no white knight. We thought Jeff Bezos was a white knight. So much for that. We thought Patrick Soon-Shiong was a white knight. Nope. So we've got to earn our way. And in the end, and this will be part of the second part of your discussion, is we've got to prove our value to the public we serve.
All right, so let's slip into reach versus relevance. I cannot believe that small panel I did at the New York Press Association, I recorded it. So I teed up the conversation by referring to a webinar I had hosted where I had Tao Diaz, the former head of Google News Initiative Data, say these words. And he was talking about frequency and cadence. And he said, a good publication must have 15 stories a day to be relevant. Suddenly there's a number out there. And then during that, everybody's blowing up in the chat room. This is during a webinar going, I can't do 15. I hardly can get one out a day. And then the discussion came on AI and using different tools in order to increase your cadence. And there was two sides to this going back and forth. So let me ask you a question. If we produce too much news, are we doing something wrong? Are we confusing activity with value? I know you read the article and you read the interview. What do you think of that debate, and which side do you lean towards?
Of course, Mike, you'd be disappointed if I weren't obnoxious, and I'm going to pick a third side in a minute, and argue against both those sides. Absolutely, we are burying people in too damn much content. One of the lessons I learned in my book, The Gutenberg Parenthesis, sorry for the second plug, is that it was a mistake for us to see ourselves in the business of making content. That content is a Gutenberg era notion. It's from the physicality of a newspaper that you got to make this product and you got to fill it with something. And we called that content. And we think that's where the value is resident. Online, we're absolutely giving people too much stuff. The whole world is giving people too much stuff. They're buried in it. It reminds me of what, in my research for Hot Type, I read speeches by Whitlaw Reid, who was the publisher of the New York Tribune back in the day. And before the mechanization and industrialization of print, before the linotype, when print was just speeding up with steam-powered presses, he said, advertising is not going to be the support of news because people are already, we would have to print too many ads that would cost us too much in paper, and the papers would become too big and our readers would become too upset. Well, he was clearly wrong and pretty much soon did change the business model, but he wasn't sure what the business model was. He didn't know in the 1870s, 1880s, that advertising was going to be a support of newspapers. and that would have the impact of increasing the size of what we did and the volume of what we produced. So we got caught in this notion of we make content. We're a factory for content. Come the internet and trying to get attention there from Google and from social, we said, let's make more and more and more content. We both know places where the poor journalists are strapped to their desks, not out reporting, and they're just looking at what's trending, and they're trying to hop onto that and rewrite each other, like the fabled BuzzFeed two-colored dress story that everybody rewrote for no good reason but to waste a resource. So the volume of content argument is one we may get pushed into by the current models of online. It's wrong. The relevance content argument is a better argument, I think. We have to be relevant to people. But I'm going to argue my third way, which is that we're not in the content business, that we should be in the business of conversation and collaboration and relationships and so on. And that's the way we're going to have to build our future, is by having those relationships. Terry Parris Jr., who was at ProPublica, then The City, the New York Times, he just came off a year fellowship at the John S. Knight Fellowship at Stanford. Terry, when Kerry Brown and I ran the engagement journalism program at CUNY, he had a class in which he took students to Brooklyn and ran what he called open newsrooms. And he brought people in from the community to discern what mattered to them, rather than us saying that we know what matters to them, and then taking the precious journalistic resources to that. It could be housing, it could be transportation, it could be education. He's now making that into a program that he's bringing across the nation, and we hope to work with him in New Jersey. And that establishes an entirely different relationship. Imagine if we kind of set up what we would have thought of as newsrooms in libraries across our towns. Imagine if we were truly open to the community to bring them in, so we listen to them and what their needs are, and then we tried to answer their needs. Then they're going to trust us more, not because we make a lot of content or not because we try to guess what they want, but because we are answering their needs. That's the model for journalism that I want to see a shift to.
All right, well, closing. We got to bring this thing home. I had Ken Doctor on the day he announced the new model, if whatever, the lookout model, the buffet that he called it, of different items that people are going to be able to grab from. And I asked him point blank, why did you not incubate this in an existing legacy media structure to turn it around? His exact words were, we didn't want to inherit the culture. We wanted to start from scratch. If you were building a local news organization today, Jeff, I got you out of retirement. Here's a whole mess of money. Cover this community. Would you absorb an existing brand like the Baltimore Banner just did with the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette? Would you start it from scratch? And what would you do? What were your priorities do to earn the trust from that community, get those essential eyeballs, and become relevant to the community and its growth?
I think it's possible to do that with a legacy brand. I think that if you have the right mindset and the right people, you can do that. But I also think it's going to be a lot easier in most cases to do it from scratch. And beyond that, I mean, the next book that I want to work on is about what I proclaim as the death of mass media. I spent 50 years devoted to journalism in what was mass media, and I have regrets. I think that I think we did things wrong. I think that we lost trust very long ago. We never had it with some people. So I think building from scratch is probably the best method overall.
What would you do and prioritize in that model?
I'd point back to something like, I think there's a lot of local blogs. Way back in the day, I'm proud to say that I helped inspire Debbie Gallant to start BaristaNet, which is now part of what's going on in Montclair, which a really sustainable, good model there. I tried to get Debbie to do a local blog for NJ.com when I was at Advance, and she said, why would I do that for you? And so she did her own. You have places like that. You have Red Bank Green here in New Jersey, run by Kenny Katzkra, who also runs Broad Street Ads. You have Morristown Green. I could keep going on. You have these local blogs that just have reporting on the street, care about what people matter in their lives, not just reporting on the mayor's picadillos, but also reporting on the new restaurant in town, and have ad sales and are close to their community. I think that's in essence what the Village Media model is. They're seeing that Richard Gingras, ex-Google, is now the chairman of their board. and they don't see themselves so much as a news company as a community company. And I think that's the way to do it, is to go and make sure that you listen to people, you're responsive to their needs, you're among them. And you also recognize, by the way, that small businesses are part of that community. And in your advertising, you're helping support them and they're helping support you.
Jeff Jarvis, journalist, professor, author, media critic. And when I say author, I keep another book coming out, and you just teased in one after that. And of course,
I didn't plug magazine. That's another one here, Mike. All three are available right now at jeffjarvis.com. Always be selling, Mike. Always be selling.
But I was going to say, but most importantly in your bio now, 5-time guest on E&P Reports. Jeff, thanks so much. We'll bring you back after the new book comes out, and we'll chat about that more. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Mike.